Hello, everybody. It's Roberto. I want to make another video for mindset recovery, and this one's going to be on the Sinclair Method. So, basically, I had a stroke back in November of 2019, and I previously, before I lost my job as a result of that stroke, I had been drinking to deal with stress and help me sleep. And I have been abusing alcohol for at least about 30 years. And it got to be pretty habitual for me where I'd get off work and I was in the habit of just going and buying alcohol after work. And so I was drinking at least 5 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week. I didn't consider myself to be a heavy user of alcohol. I mean, I could drink, what I considered a reasonable amount of alcohol. I would often still be craving alcohol when I ran out, but the way that I controlled how much alcohol I drank was by how much I bought. So sometimes I would not be done drinking and I'd go back up to the store and get more. Other times I would go to bed. One thing that I tried was locking my keys up in a kitchen safe that had a timer on it so that I couldn't get to my car keys after I had finished drinking whatever I decided before I started drinking was going to be the amount that I wanted to drink. So that was helping me a little bit. But when I had my stroke, I lost my driver's license and I was stuck in my house. So I was isolating. And then so I got out of the hospital the beginning of December 2020. And then the pandemic hit. So here I was with no driver's license. And then the pandemic, we all know that had people isolated. So what happened was I started to drink more often because I was bored and depressed and didn't have anything else to do. So I decided I was going to quit drinking. So I got involved with a outpatient rehab program, and Medicaid was paying for it, and they were giving me transportation. So that got me out of the house. They were teaching me ways to deal, some coping skills that I had never been taught or utilized in my life because I would just use or drink when I didn't feel good to deal with emotions or, stress or whatever. And that became my go to. And I never really had any motivation to learn or utilize coping skills. Well, when I decided to quit drinking and go back to that program, I got to the point where I was able to I'd make it maybe 30 days a couple times. And then I'd have to pick up another white chip, which is in AA or the 12-step programs when you start over. And I just was embarrassed. And I had a lot of guilt and shame centered around that. It's a peer support kind of a group where you have people who you can talk to, and that was really helpful for me, but it wasn't helping me completely stop. And I was embarrassed to tell them that I drank again, and they'd be joking around about how many white chips I'd picked up, which was humorous to them. And even though maybe they understood, it made me feel bad about myself. So I stopped telling people that I was, messing up and drinking. But I got down to the point where I was drinking probably twice a month, which was a lot better for me physically and financially, especially since I was unable to work. But it wasn't what I wanted to do. So I was watching a lot of Alcoholics Anonymous speaker meetings on the streaming service to which I am subscribed, and that service suggests videos on topics that you are interested in. And I saw a video on the Sinclair Method, and I'd never heard of it. So anyway, this guy was a psychologist in Canada, and he had quit drinking, and he made it about 5 years. He had gotten divorced and remarried, made it about 5 years with this new wife. and then he started drinking again. And as happens with a lot of alcoholics who quit drinking for a period of time and start again, he got way worse than he had been when he quit the first time. And he lost his business, where he was a psychologist. He lost his house, and his second wife left him. And so he was trying to quit drinking with AA. He wasn't having success. And I guess his connections through being a psychologist, he had the opportunity to go in and get some testing done. They hooked him up to like CAT scans and things of this nature. And they were looking at the areas of the brain that light up when he would drink alcohol. And so, from my understanding, the way um, drugs and alcohol work is they release endorphins and different chemicals in the brain, and that reinforces this behavior, because in your brain, when it wants to feel good again, it tells you to repeat this behavior. And that's why drugs and alcohol are so addictive, because that is what your brain knows to do. Gambling is another one of them. So anyway, the pharmaceutical that I'm aware of, there's different ones that they use in the Sinclair method, but it's called naltrexone. And so the guy, David Sinclair, who's now deceased, but pioneered this therapy, he said it was pretty much based on like Pavlov's dog. So if you're familiar with Pavlov's dog, he did experiments with these dogs, and when he would feed them, he would ring a bell. So the dogs began to associate the sound of the bell with their food, and he would measure how much they would salivate. And then he'd stop giving them the food and still ring the bell, and the dog would still salivate. Well, eventually, after he stopped feeding them and giving them the reward of the food when he rang the bell, their brains stopped associating the sound of the bell with the food, and they stopped salivating. So he said, if you have a chemical that you can put in the brain that will block those pleasure chemicals from being received, and you repeat the behavior that had been giving you the pleasure, then eventually your brain also would figure out that it wasn't going to receive the same stimulus from whatever it is that you're doing. So originally, naltrexone was approved for opiate addiction. So when people would take opiates, painkillers, or heroin or whatever, their brains would not get the pleasure chemicals. And so eventually they would stop the behavior. Well, it was approved for alcohol. And so he did experiments on people, and he found that when they continued to drink with naltrexone in their system, he started with mice. They continued to drink with naltrexone in their system. Eventually, their body stopped craving the alcohol because it wasn't receiving the the chemical that they actually wanted. Whereas a drinker, I always assumed I was drinking for the intoxication, but apparently my brain was more interested in the endorphins that were being released. So I had gotten to the point where I was drinking about twice a month. So I'd make it like 15 days, and then I'd drink a couple days on the weekend, and then I'd go back on the wagon on Sunday, and I could make it a couple more weeks. But when I started on the naltrexone, I talked to the doctor at the outpatient clinic where I had been going, and I explained what I wanted to do, and he put me on the naltrexone. He wanted me to take it every day because that's how it was approved. But they talk about in the Sinclair Method videos that that's not an effective strategy. Even Dr. Sinclair said that the people who quit drinking, went to rehab, quit drinking, and under abstinence, they would take naltrexone. They had a very low success rate. But the people who continued to drink but were compliant with the therapy and would take the naltrexone an hour before they would drink, they had about an 80% success rate, because their brains would no longer associate after time, no longer associated the alcohol with the endorphins. And so what I found was here I was drinking pretty regularly, about every 15 days. As soon as I started taking the naltrexone before I would drink, I dropped it to once a month. And I started in October, the end of October of 2020. And so now I have traditionally been a drinker at Christmas and New Year's. So I had made up my mind I was going to drink on Christmas. So I went at Christmas time, and I always base my plans on the past. So I'm used to like blowing it out when I do drink. So I got me a 6 pack of some good beer that I like, took my naltrexone and had some food, waited an hour, and I started drinking. And I was planning on smashing that whole 6 pack. But I got a few beers into it and I lost interest in it. And I just left the rest in the refrigerator, which is unheard of for me because I would start drinking and then I wouldn't be satisfied with the amount that I had and I'd go get more. And this would put me in a dangerous situation of driving under the influence. Even though I weigh about 275 pounds now, before my stroke, I was about 300. So, I mean, a 6 pack for me, in my opinion, wasn't too much for me to be able to drive. Surely it's dangerous and illegal, but I would successfully make it to the store and back with more alcohol on numerous occasions. So that just reinforced my belief that I had no problems doing it. Well, this particular time I drank a couple beers and went to bed. And then come New Year's, when I had planned to drink again, I still had beer left. And so I drank a few more. And again, I just got bored of drinking and I went to bed. I didn't get drunk and I didn't go get more alcohol. And so now I've continued to, I don't obsess about alcohol. I wasn't a day drinker anyway, so I didn't really wake up wanting more alcohol. But now every once in a while, about once a month, I'll get the desire to drink. I'll get me a bottle of wine, which is funny because I used to never just buy one bottle of wine. I would either buy 2 bottles of wine to get started, or I'd buy one of the big bottles that's like 2 bottles worth of wine. And then I'd start drinking that, and then I'd normally end up going back to the store to get more. Well, now, if I get the desire to drink, I'll get me a regular sized bottle of wine, and I will get home from work and take my naltrexone, set my timer, eat some dinner, and I won't pop the wine open until after it's been an hour. And I drink, I have been finishing the bottle of wine, but the difference is like back when I would have wine and I would drink a couple glasses and I'd be ready to go get another one. I'd be like, oh my gosh, I hope there's more wine. And if there was still wine left in the bottle when I got in the kitchen, I would be so excited about it. But normally it wasn't enough because I don't know about you, but the glasses of wine that I pour, you get like 2 decent sized glasses and then one about half size glass. So I'd pour that last glass and then I'd be like, yeah, I need to go get some more wine. But the last few times I've drank wine, it's like I drink a glass and then I think I've drank more than I have. And I'm like, go in the kitchen and there's more wine left than I thought. And it's not that I'm disappointed, I'm surprised, but I'm not like super excited like I used to be. Like, oh, heck yeah, man, there's more wine than I thought. It's like, eh. So I'll drink, another glass and a half of wine and then just crash, go to bed. It's a totally different situation. So I believe at this point, if I continue to operate the way I have been, that by the end of the year, I won't even be craving alcohol anymore. I mean, that's what I've seen happen with people on the streaming service. I've been watching these videos, and people who had been drinking more quantity and more often than I had, after a couple of years, they just don't drink anymore. So now, I mean, I would consider a normal drinker to be somebody who maybe doesn't really drink every week or even every month, but maybe Christmas time, they go to a Christmas party, they have a few drinks, they're good. That's it. They don't think about it again for a year. I mean, that's one way that you can utilize naltrexone if you want to continue to drink. From my understanding, if you just get to where it's like Christmas time and you want to go to a party or something, you take your naltrexone, you wait an hour before you have your first drink, and you can drink socially like that. Or, like for me, I would like to think that if by Christmas time I'm not thinking about drinking anymore, that I'll just say, forget it. Why drink? Waste of time, waste of money. We'll see what happens, but I'm very hopeful that this will be the case. This has given me hope. I have been struggling with alcohol and substances for about 30 years, and this is the first thing that I found that gives me hope. I think it's a miracle. So, anyway, if you think that you could benefit from this, then I would say talk to my physician. I would do some research first because, from my understanding, most doctors don't really know about this treatment. And so if you know more about it when you talk to them, I think you'll have more of a chance of being successful with it. But if you watch more videos on this service, you'll see that there are organizations that can help you with it. It's not a controlled substance, so it's not hard to order online. If you get involved with a counselor through an organization, you can order it online. It's not ridiculously expensive. But anyway, I would suggest that if this sounds like something you could benefit from, to continue to research it. Anyway, the continuation of this channel, I plan to focus on the 12 steps of AA, because I think that alcohol and substances for me were not the problem, they were a symptom, and it's a spiritual solution, and the 12 steps have helped me in that regard. But I think that my inability to stop drinking 100% was stopping me from being able to benefit from the spiritual program. And the naltrexone has enabled me to be able to benefit from the 12 steps more than I was before, not feel so bad about myself, and give me hope for the future. This is Roberto signing out.